Jacinda Ardern.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Social Development and asks, does she stand by the statement made on her behalf in the House yesterday that, quote, there will always be times when resources are stretched, but I believe we do have sufficient resources to care for the needs of vulnerable children?
Speaker.
Honourable Chester Burrows.
On behalf of the Minister, yes. In particular, I stand by my statement that we now have more social workers with a bigger budget investigating more cases in a more timely way.
Yes, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
If SIFs have all the resources they need to deal with the 50% increase in notifications that require further action since 2008, why does the Midlands region and the Central region, which includes Rotorua right through to Porirua, have fewer permanent social workers now than they did 5 years ago?
Honourable Chester Burrows.
On behalf of the Minister, it's important to note that across the country there are 250 more social workers working on the front line. They are investigating more cases that are reported to them, and there are 150,000 notifications a year. Each are triaged, each are investigated, and in the cases that the member quoted yesterday, every one of them was dealt with within the time frame, and the issue was around the length of time it took to record, not to act and intervene.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I apologise. Speaker, there's a very specific question about a particular region and the numbers which was not addressed.
There was a specific question around two regions, Midland and Central. I think it would be helpful for the member to ask the question again for the Minister.
Supplementary to the Minister. If SIFs have all the resources they need to deal with the 50% increase in notifications that require further action since 2008, why does the Midlands region and the Central region, which includes Rotorua through to Porirua, have fewer permanent staff now than they did 5 years ago?
Honourable Chester Burrows.
Mr Speaker, I can only conclude that because they're meeting the time frames required, that they do have sufficient resources in those two regions.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Does he agree with the statement by Lucy Stanford-Reid, Chief Executive of the Aotearoa New Zealand Association of Social Workers, that, quote, SIF staff levels haven't increased at the level that's matching the number of notifications that are being recorded and, quote, are simply a drop in the bucket? If not, what evidence does he have that staffing levels are sufficient?
Honourable Chester
On behalf of the Minister, I believe that the numbers have increased in the SIF social worker numbers adequate to deal with the increased notifications, and I also note that the way in which matters are dealt with now, the way investigations are run, technology used, cross-agency collaboration, that we're doing it in different ways than we have in the past, and that reflects the numbers.
Point of order.
Mr Speaker, I did ask what evidence was available to back up the claims by the Minister. I still yet to see the evidence.
The difficulty is the member asked two questions within her supplementary, and the Minister has obviously chosen to ask the first question. Order. The member quite clearly answered the first part. Does he agree with that question? The statement by a lady you quoted, he has quite clearly answered that.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. It seemed to me that actually the Minister was addressing the second part of the question, but in doing so didn't actually go all the way to actually providing any kind of evidence rather than just his opinion.
Order. I have ruled that the Minister addressed the first part of the member's question. He's not required to ask the second part. The member can has she a further supplementary? Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary to the Minister. Why won't she agree to a baseline review of SIFs, given the last one was 10 years ago and under Labor, and since that time demand on social workers has grown exponentially? Or has she instead prioritised her trip to Malta to sign a pension portability agreement that affects just 5 Kiwis?
Speaker.
Honourable Chester Burrows.
Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, it's interesting to note that the Minister in charge of SIFs in 2003, the Honourable Ruth Dyson, quite appropriately, did a baseline review because of the fact that that department was in disarray. And we have benefited over time from that review. But just to give an example, in March 2004, a year after that review, the number of unallocated cases were 4,709. As of the 31st of May this year, there were 44 unallocated cases.
Only 44?
Question number 9, Dr Kennedy Graham.